Hi, Adam. So firstly, could you tell me what your job role is, your job title, and what does it involve?
Okay. I'm the charity director of a charity called Refugee Roots based in Nottingham. And my job involves a whole lot of different things. We're a small charity, so I end up doing lots of different jobs. But I line manage a number of staff. So we've got 4 staff members that I line manage. And I coordinate with some of my staff members, around 60 plus volunteers currently, due to the lockdown and recruiting a lot more volunteers of late. But so that's one part of my job. Certainly takes up quite a big chunk of my time. But then, in terms of actually running the charity, I'm the most senior level of in the charity. I've got the most senior kind of level of management and oversight, and I work under the direction of a board of trustees, and the board of trustees are voted on by our membership, and that's how we operate. So I've got a number of different levels at which I'm operating, and where I also have line management from one of the trustees as well. And other aspects of my job involve the day-to-day support stuff that we offer to asylum seekers and refugees in Nottingham. So I do get hands-on involved in a lot of that too. Because that's, like I said, in a smaller organisation, we end up doing lots of different jobs and having to do lots of different things and be prepared to, to help people when they need it, and to support my staff team to achieve their goals as well. So
Yeah,
good
and
mix.
yeah, could you just give me an overview of what Refugee Roots does as an organisation?
Yeah, we help asylum seekers and refugees build relationships and navigate the complexities of building a new life in the UK. So we welcome everybody and value each person, their culture, embracing the equality and diversity, and supporting them with their most basic needs, but also through a range of empowerment initiatives, including befriending, accompanying, um, advice and guidance, and also running supportive groups and activities. That's how we connect with people, and we give them the support that they need to overcome some of the difficulties that they experience when they're trying to settle here in the UK, and also as they're going through the whole process of an asylum claim. Um, in lockdown and out of lockdown, some of their services have changed, and we're working remotely for a good part of it at the minute, although we are facing some face-to-face and in-person support. But we've done a lot on the telephone and a lot on in kind of Zoom groups and WhatsApp groups, although most of the people that we are working with will struggle to have Wi-Fi or pay for internet on their phones. So that's why we've used things like the telephone and the Royal Mail to send resources to and from people that we're supporting. So that's been incredibly useful. But yes, a good, a mixture of remote responses that we've been able to provide, and now doing a bit more in person as well.
Yeah, okay. I know you've touched on this, but could you talk us through a typical day of work? Obviously, it has changed probably a lot due to COVID, but currently, a typical day at work.
So today, I started this morning working through about 30 emails. I'm halfway there. That's good. So I've got another 13 or 14 to go, and so some admin. There's a fair amount of admin that comes with this job, and I've just been on the phone to a solicitor on behalf of one of our participants, to arrange that they have an appointment. And then I've been on the phone with a volunteer to support a volunteer, and I'm here. We're having a meeting now. From here, I'll go on to, there might be other meetings. I might be in touch with colleagues that I work with to support them. We usually have a team meeting once a week, so that's something that I coordinate. And Yeah, a mixture of things. You know, there'll be some support stuff where I'm providing the support to one of our participants to, um, like the example I gave, or I'll be doing something as a line manager, or I'll be doing um, uh, admin as well. But on other days, I'll have certain tasks that I'm working through. So it might be that I'm doing some fundraising for the charity, and I've got a bid that I'm working on, or it might be some of the I might be sending some reports to our trustees ahead of a trustee meeting or something like that. So it really does depend on whatever's on the agenda, whatever the next deadline is, and preparing whatever work it is that I need to for those deadlines and for those meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what key skills do you use in this job?
Key skills. Patience. Be patient. That's a new one. In a lockdown, out of lockdown situation,
Yeah.
things take a little bit longer now, and it's not always as straightforward. Not that it was always straightforward before, but certainly has its challenges now. So definitely patience. That's patience with in my role. Not only am I working with and line managing staff, but I'm also coordinating and working with volunteers, and that brings to its own challenges and its own benefits. And when you're working with people in different ways, you do need to have patience with them and with all the different expectations that any one person brings. And then there's also, you relate to other partners, other organizations, other professional, other statutory services. You've got your board of trustees as well in the charity sector, where um, there's that level of governance, and on a number of different levels, you're working with different people, different roles, different expectations of what those relationships entail. And so patience to kind of work out and work how to best operate in those is definitely one. I think a big one, and certainly one that I learn and on a daily basis is my time management, and just um, being able to prioritize work as well. There's a lot of things at the end of the day that don't always get ticked off my to-do list. And it's no, when you've got your list of things to do, knowing which things are most urgent, um, and and being realistic about how long a task will take. If you know that a meeting is going to take 30 minutes or an hour, that's great. If you know that that's it, done and sealed, fantastic. But if you know that there's going to be more required of you after that meeting, then or there's some work that you have to do following on from it, then it's being aware of things like that, being aware of um, things like when you've got deadlines that you're working on something, making sure that everything's uh, in on time as well. So if you're relying on other people to get reports to you, making sure that you've got those in good time, so that you're not at the last minute either trying to complete it or panicking because somebody hasn't sent you a report, or you're there's a missing piece in the jigsaw. And so it's really it is time management is certainly a big one. And but it's not just the managing and organizing of your time, it's also having the decisiveness about which things are most urgent and which things are okay to leave and pick up on another occasion. So um, and then in our line of work, when we get, we often get a lot of requests from the people that we're working with, or we get referrals coming in from other agencies, and we really do have to look at that and make decisions as a team, but as individuals too, as to which things we need to act upon more urgently and which things we can leave for another time. and that that could be anything from somebody um, has become homeless, and they're homeless today, or it could be somebody um, needs to make an appointment for their GP because they, they, they haven't had one, or they need to change their medication. Now, you might be thinking, well, how important is it? How urgent is it? Um, and it's assessing that, analyzing that, and then making the decision. Because if in a day you can only do one of those tasks, then you're going to have to make sure that you choose the one that's uh, most urgent and that will certain yeah. So that's kind of some of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's great. And obviously, I assume communication is very key, both written and verbal.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, communication's huge as well. If you can't write a coherent message or email or letter, then that's you're snookered. Also, when you're communicating orally or to a team, they need to understand what you're telling them. They need to understand the instructions.
The next question is, what did you study when you were younger, and what was kind of your career path to getting to this job?
Okay, well, I did my A levels in school, and then instead of university, I went to a Christian Bible college and studied theology. Um, from there, I went on to I was actually working in music for a few years as a musician, um, and working towards working for a charity overseas in West Africa, where I worked for a couple of years with children that were on the streets. So coming from that job, uh, moved back to the UK about 5 years ago, and from there got into some support work stuff with a charity that worked with adults with cerebral palsy, and from there got my job, which I now presently have at Refugee Roots, and um, so that's kind of been my journey. So um, yeah.
Yeah. And are there any major tips that you'd give to someone looking to pursue a career in this field?
Yeah, just get experience, volunteer, give your time to places, and if there's jobs opening up in charities, don't shy away because the contracts might be shorter, or there's not there might only be part-time jobs available. Um, once you start working in a charity, or get a job in a charity, there's often opportunities to find other jobs, whether that's internally with the same organization or outside. Once you kind of get into that sector, you kind of become part of a network of organizations too, and then that experience will stand for you. Certainly, if you've been volunteering too, and you've done that for a considerable amount of time, and the responsibilities you've had have have given you real insight into how the sector functions, and a real understanding of the people that you're working with, and any training that you can access as a volunteer is always worth doing as well, because that will again really stand well for you when you're looking for employment in the sector. And I think really it's just taking um, taking the risks of some of the short-term contracts that are out there. Often a lot of jobs that this charity sector advertise are funding restricted, so funding might only be available for 6 months or for a year. There might have been a 2-year post at one point, but maybe somebody's left the organisation and there's only guaranteed funding left for the next 8 months or something like that. And like I said, once you're there and working, there's other opportunities too. and any employment as well that you can find is also good for finding other work, because it develops you, develops your skills, and it also means that you've got some income as well, and you're not
Yeah.
just losing money through your pockets. But yeah, so whatever you can do, do it and do it well.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes when you've volunteered with an organisation for a while, sometimes a job comes up there. So it's always worth, I guess, volunteering if you
Yeah,
can't get a job.
definitely, and definitely, and it's advantageous to be volunteering somewhere. It doesn't mean that you'll get a job with that organization or charity, but to similar organizations and charities, um, if you're the candidate that stands out and you've had that experience, then that's pretty good. That's pretty good for you if you've had some time in a relevant role that relates to whatever job it is you might be going for.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish you'd done differently in terms of your career? And if so, how would you have done it differently if you could?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not one to kind of think back and have much regret, or feelings of regret. Um, some of the things that I've definitely um, learned was that it's definitely worth building up time in any organization. And certainly I've been at Refugee Roots now for 3.5 years, or just over, maybe 3 years, 9 months. And to do a job well, and to kind of maybe see things through and to really develop as a person yourself, it does take time. And I would recommend that if you get a job in a charity, or you're working in an organization, and you know the possibility of continuing work there um, is realistic. It's worth actually giving your time to the job and seeing it through, for 3, 4, 5 years, who knows how long. But certain we go through, we've seen a number of people come through and work for us, and they stay a year and they go, or they stay just short of a year, and um, whilst they come in and might bring a lot of benefit to the charity, and they get a lot from it. In fact, some of the real change that we see in people's lives, and some of the opportunities um, I guess, career progression would only start to emerge maybe after a couple of years, a few years. Um, so taking my own experience, my own journey, when I started, Refugee Roots wasn't a registered charity. We were a project based in a church, and within the first year, we got to a point where we had about 30 volunteers, having only had about 5 or 6. Then we had 2 or 3 staff members. In the next year that followed, we began looking at our whole identity, and we rebranded, renamed in that time, and we started preparing to register as a charity. And that process from kind of getting our everything together to become a charity took about a year of work, kind of thinking through our strategy, our objectives, who we were going to be. It took time to identify who would be our first trustees, um, and really have that focus set. And then from there was a 6 months period of time where, from kind of January, I think it was 2019 to June 2019, where we started putting together the application to the Charity Commission. And that 3 months later, after being submitted around March time, then we got the registration come through, and so that was massive thing for the organisation to go through, and then a year on from that, we've had our first year as a registered charity, and to for me to have been able to be part of all of those different stages and be part of all of that change is of greater benefit to me and for my future, and it's also been necessary for the charity to have my input through that whole time, and we're still not finished yet. There's still plenty to do, so I think it's definitely worth being prepared to give time to an organization or to a job, and not as soon as you have maybe cold feet or something else that's a little bit more attractive comes up. You have to make the best decisions for you, certainly, but if there's potential in a job, it's worth looking at what the potential is and look at what possibilities there are if you were to stay somewhere, and weigh that up against any other opportunities that might be presented to you. Because I think there are opportunities to progress in the sector as well, but also it is certainly a lot more satisfying for me personally to have journeyed with some of the people that we've supported over the period of time that I've been in the organisation, and be part of it from start to finish. And one such person that we've worked with right from the first day I started in the charity recently got leave to remain, which means she's got the right to stay in the UK and been granted her status. And we've been through everything from appeals with her to her being a regular member at some of our groups, to providing some of the most basic needs, food and clothing and other things. And this is somebody who has been a big part of my life, and we've been a big part of hers, and we're still helping even at this transition. And that's really valuable to have had that kind of input into somebody's life.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because often in the kind of world today, it's common in businesses to jump from one job to another, I guess. So it's interesting that in this sector, you recommend staying for a long time, which I think I completely agree with. The other thing I was going to ask is, what is the best career advice you've ever received? Obviously, a difficult question.
Best career advice I've ever received. It was probably going back to my my days in school when we were was choosing university and where I would study, and I was advised to have more than one or two options, and that stuck with me right through. I've often had a number of options available to me, and roads to kind of walk down and see where they go. And when it's come to applying for jobs, I a number of applications, interviews, and some of them, well, I didn't get the job, and in some ways, actually, now I'm in a job that is more satisfying probably than some of the jobs that I could have got, and I just had to wait a little bit longer for it to come around. But actually having that drive to just keep going, and to have to not just put all of our hopes into one path, or one job role. In fact, I most of my time before had been spent working with children and young people, and I was very set on working with children and young people. And at some point, I started looking for different types of jobs, and not necessarily looking for jobs with children or young people. And it's it's been it's been a very it's been a very good change in many ways, and it's put me in a role that I probably wouldn't have gone for if I was so fixed on being working with kids or young people. Yeah.
You kind of touched on it with working with vulnerable people, but what's the best part of the job for you? And also, is there any like TV, book, or or film recommendations that give a good insight into this sector, but particularly refugees in particular?
Job for me is seeing the difference that it makes. You know, it's not always me directly that's part of the difference, but certainly by the by the skills and the time and the energy that I pour into the charity and the organization, seeing how my colleagues and our volunteers go on to really make a difference in people's lives. It's really, really rewarding, but it also is helpful too because that's what's motivating. Um, I'm not driven um, by wanting to have some uh, authority or to be a director, but the reason why I'm a director, the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to make it possible for our volunteers and our staff to achieve what they do, and I want to see the people that we're working with, their lives change too. So that's what's motivating. So when I see that and when I'm aware of what's going on, um, then that feeds back into me being able to deliver well. And it's we build up some resilience in this field because change is hard. It's slow often, and there's a lot of things that um, can pull us down because when you're working with vulnerable people, you don't always see change, and some of the change might be a few steps forward and then quite a lot back, um, and that's frustrating. But we hold on to those the small moments as well as the big ones, and that's what keeps us going.
Yeah. And then the other question was, I don't know if you do, but if you have any TV, book, or film recommendations that maybe give a good insight into either the charity sector or just refugees in particular.
Not so much books or TV documentaries, but really, really good resources are things like NCVO, um, Refugee Action as well, and the Refugee Council, in particular for the refugee areas. Right to Remain as well, have great resources and information. Um, and the local CVS as well is a good place to go into and find out what opportunities there are in the sector for volunteering, for work, for um, and and they offer lots of different training opportunities as well. So everything from training for trustees to training for volunteers to training for volunteer coordinators, and so right here in Nottingham on our doorstep, there's resources available, and I would encourage people to get involved and get information from those sources. BBC or Guardian or something like that, and will report on the kind of issues that affect the sector. So that's useful too. But it's good to be widely read as well and engage with uh, not just your world and the world that you're interested in, but also the those who have different opinions too. So it's worth having um, both in mind. So just resource yourself with as much as you can.
Yeah, great. Anna, I assume as well your website is very good if you're interested in your organization,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
can
definitely.
volunteer and get involved in volunteering with you as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. refugeeroots.org.uk, and we're on the socials as well. Find us there, follow, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.